How come no one's there? There we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Terrific. We'll give a few seconds for everybody to get on in. And we're so glad you're here tonight with us. All righty. So again, we're a little over time already, so I'm going to make sure that we get started. Again, I want to just say thank you and welcome to the Center for the Business of Health Career Network's Fireside Chat. We're excited to have UNC alum Katherine Engstrom tonight, who will discuss her winding career path and how she made impact along the way. We again just thank you for joining us this evening. This Fireside Chat is part of the UNC Center for the Business of Health's Career Networks program. Career Networks is a constellation of resources meant to educate and create community around the continuously evolving healthcare ecosystem, which I'm sure you are all aware of. You can explore the CBOH Career Networks platform via the URL that I'll paste in the chat box in just a moment. For tonight's chat, we ask that you turn your video on and mute your microphone when you're not asking questions. We kind of want this to have a discussion community feel tonight. The format of tonight's session will include a presentation by Katherine, followed by a few moderated questions by me, ending with an open Q&A and discussion with the audience. If you have questions during any part of the presentation, please raise your digital hand or put something in the chat if we don't see you in time. So at this point, I'd love to get started. So I'm going to turn it over to Katherine. So Katherine, welcome, and I'll let you go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm really honored to be here talking with all of you. And my sole purpose in being here and talking with you in the Fireside Chat is to be of help to you. I sat in your chair, you can see from here, quite a number of years ago. And so I've been in your shoes, and reflecting back on myself when I was a business school student, I remember being equally excited about the opportunities that I saw that Carolina, being a Carolina student, would bring. And at the same time, equally petrified that I would somehow screw it up and the opportunities would slide by. And when I was a student back in 04 to 06, we did not have the CBOH. We did not have 100 women in Carolina. And just thinking about my experience then, I feel like if an alum had come to me and who had been in my chair, who had come out the other side and talked about their experience, it would have been helpful to me. So I'm hoping that this will equally be helpful to you. Today, I'll do a quick introduction, which I'm doing right now, and then a little bit of perspective, sort of reflecting back to my time as a student. And when I sat in your chair, what was I thinking and what was I feeling? I tend to think of my career as a wild and crazy ride, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'll talk a bit about what I've done so far, and I fully expect it to be wild and crazy going forward. And then really pull it back to who I was those many years ago. And if only I had known some of what I know now at that time. And so again, share some of those learnings with you. And then I'm most looking forward to our open discussion. You guys are the future of business, of health, of nursing, of public health. And I'm just excited to hear from you and happy to answer any questions that you have. So for as long as I can remember, I had this picture of what a career would be. When I was 12 years old, I had this picture. In college, I had it. When I was a 30-year-old business student, I had it. And I saw very clearly that a career would look like this. It would be a clear path. There would be very defined steps on the path. And then at each step, it would be pretty obvious how one would achieve things to ascend to the next step. And this was in my mind, and this was in my mind as I was sitting in your chair. I was wrong. What actually happened is this. This is my reality. And I think the reality of many business people, certainly many of my friends. There are ups, there are downs, there are zigs, there are zags. This is what my career has looked like and has felt like. And it's been actually really fun. And I've enjoyed not every moment, but most moments on this winding road. And I wish that somebody had showed this to me earlier, so I would have been comfortable in my twists and turns. As I was in your seat. So now I'm sort of putting myself back, closing my eyes and putting myself back in 2004 through 2006, sitting in McCall as an MBA student, and sort of what I was thinking. The first, which maybe may relate to a lot of you here, is that I've always been fascinated by biology. I loved bio in high school. I majored in bio in college. But I knew I didn't want to work in a lab. And I knew that I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor. And so I didn't see where I fit in healthcare. So I was a little lost. It was an interest, but I was a little lost in how I could have anything to do with healthcare in my life. I also thought that I had to have it all figured out. It seemed to me, in talking with my friends and my fellow classmates, that everybody else had it all figured out in business school. That they came in knowing what they wanted to do, they knew what they needed to do in business school, and then they knew where they would go afterwards. It also, because of that, put so much pressure. I put so much pressure on myself, on finding what I thought had to be a perfect internship. So for MBA, you do an internship before your first and your second year, and then a perfect first job out of MBA. And that would be the same for anything that I was studying in Carolina. I had to have a perfect experience at Carolina so I could have a perfect trajectory going out. Lastly, I was really focused on myself. And I was very focused on career. I was focused on the companies that were coming to campus and who I was talking with in the companies, who I was interviewing with, what classes I was taking, what I was learning, how I was going to get that perfect internship, what I was going to do out of business school, and what my trajectory would be. So I was very focused on myself. So I'm going to come back to this in a little while in terms of what I've learned. Of course, basically all of this, I was wrong. But I learned that along the way in a long career. But before I kind of go forward, I'd like to take us back a little bit to give some context to this long and winding road. So if you think about that road, you picture all those twists and turns and zigs and zags. Just think of yourself, or me at the time, sort of in a car, just about to get on that road. That was, I call it before Carolina, before I became a Tar Heel. I love biology, as I said. That is a picture of a cell. I'm sure actually all of you know that. You're in healthcare. That's a picture of a cell. And I was just fascinated with how a cell worked, and then how a group of cells worked, and then how all the cells in your body work together, and how everything all around us worked. I loved biology. And in college, I went to Penn. I studied biology. I did a couple summer internships in labs. And I could tell it wasn't for me. It's wonderful to work in a lab, it just wasn't for me. Pre-med at Penn was so intimidating. I decided at the time I wasn't smart enough for it, so I wasn't even going to try to become a doctor. So I knew that I loved biology, but I didn't really know what to do. So I graduated from Penn and I did what I think nobody else did. I moved to London. And I don't know if you can see the picture there of London. That's Regent Street in London. And I found a job there. I found a place to live. I made some friends. I sort of built a life there. And I was working in retail operations for Woolworths, which was a big company there in England. And I joined an amazing team, really had a great time. I learned a lot. I started to understand business a little bit. And the company also luckily liked me and wanted to extend my visa. And so they applied for that. I was very excited. I was all set to keep my life going in London, and the visa was denied. I was devastated. I thought that I had found the first step on that ladder, and now it was gone. So I sort of was in my devastation for a little while, but then I remembered that as a student recently graduated from college, you could actually also get a visa in Ireland. And so I moved to Dublin. And you can see that this path is starting to take some twists and turns. The picture there is a picture of a Benetton store. And I actually worked for Benetton on the store floor. Benetton, when I was younger, was extraordinarily popular. It was a very popular clothing. It had so many bright colors. And so I was kind of cool at the time. It was kind of cool to work in a Benetton. I was excited about it. And I met this wonderful team of women who sort of took me in. They were all Irish. I was the only crazy American there. They took me in and taught me everything about working in retail on a floor. And the best part to me about Benetton, if you look there, you can see those the sweaters all beautifully folded, all the colors of the sweaters there. About 3 months in, I graduated to be able to fold the sweaters at the front of the store. And that was a huge accomplishment. I was very proud of it. And my closet to this day is immaculate and everything is in rainbow order, thanks to Benetton. But my visa ran out in Ireland. And so I needed to come back to the United States and again, sort of think about this ladder that I had in mind, and I seemed to be falling off the ladder all over the place. So I decided to move into to New York and start working in communications and public relations. I did that at Kaplan Test Preparation. Many of you may know that. You may have taken a Kaplan course or read a Kaplan book to get into Carolina. So I worked in their communications team. And it was really interesting. I'm a good writer, a good communicator. And so I think they saw a little bit of that in early me and brought me on board. And I started to get really interested in just business and understanding the customers and the products and the strategy and how they were deciding to move into one business and close down another business. I was lucky enough to be asked to write some of their annual report because I was a good writer. So I got to learn about the finance, and I didn't know what a P&L was before that. So I heard about a P&L. And it was really interesting to me. So I felt like, okay, I was starting up that ladder a little bit. But then I had to do one more big turn and decided to actually move back to Ireland and earn a master's in Irish literature. That picture there is actually my bookcase, my bookshelf just over there in my living room. A bunch of the books that I read in Ireland. It was an amazing experience, and I learned a lot. And I think from a business standpoint and a life standpoint, when you think about Irish literature, it's very interwoven in the history and politics of Ireland, which are very traumatic when you actually read the history. And so to really be able to understand the literature, you had to be able to step back and put everything in context and understand the context of what had happened and what was happening and the perspectives of many, many people involved, both in history and now. And so that ability to step back and see sort of the bigger picture, I use every day in business. So those were my pre-Carolina twists and turns. It was fun. It was interesting. I got to live abroad. I learned a lot there, but I totally lost this path that I thought I was supposed to be on. This step path, I wasn't even on a first step anymore. So I decided to get on board and go to business school. And so I came to Carolina, and I was so lucky, and I'm so grateful that Carolina accepted me in my life previous. I came in, I studied finance. I was really interested in numbers from some of what I had learned before. And I was also interested in healthcare. And so for the first time in Carolina, I started to see how I could have a path in healthcare without being on the science or the patient side of it. And my first year, very beginning of first year, Johnson & Johnson came and gave a presentation. Many of you have probably been to the company presentations. They came in, they gave a presentation. I got to meet a bunch of people. And I fell in love. I fell in love with J&J. And just was very excited about them, did all the networking, applied, couldn't wait to do an internship with them, applied for the internship, and they rejected me. And like in London, I was devastated because that was my path. I knew that that was going to get me up my ladder. And they said no. I had no finance experience. They weren't going to bring on somebody who had no finance experience. So I interviewed. I did a lot of interviews. I was rejected by a lot of companies. Finally, HP, Hewlett Packard, took a chance on me and asked me to come in as their summer intern. So I did that between my first and second years and really learned a lot. That was in finance. Came back from that into my second year and decided to get back in touch with people at J&J I had met. I might have hounded them a little, but I also had finance experience now. And luckily, J&J hired me. And so that was coming out of Carolina. I was back on this ladder. I was at J&J. And I knew that what careers at J&J would look like. And I felt very comfortable that I finally got to where I thought I should be at the beginning of this career. So you'll see on this slide, there are 3 companies. These are the 3 companies where I've worked since business school. They're all healthcare companies. Johnson & Johnson was the first. So I'll just talk quickly about what I did at each of them. And then that's enough about my path. So Johnson & Johnson came in their MBA Leadership Development Program, which is a finance program that helps build future leaders. Wonderful program. And basically, you're on a team within an operating company from a finance perspective. So I did marketing finance, operations finance, M&A finance, obviously financial planning and analysis is finance. I learned so much. I learned about a company. I understood for the first time how I could really impact healthcare from a business standpoint. in operations, for any of you who are MBA, I did a lot of cost accounting. And so that class, thank goodness I had taken that accounting class, learned about the Tour de France as well, but it was really amazing to be able to do cost accounting in real life and see how it impacted a business. M&A in J&J is really fun because they buy a lot of companies. So there was a lot of activity there. Love J&J. They're very focused in New Jersey, and I needed to move back to New England, which is where I'm from. So I made a move to Haemonetics, but I felt like I was still on my path because I started Haemonetics, which is a medical device company, in their finance group. So I was still sort of progressing in finance. Haemonetics makes collection devices for blood plasma. And so I was on that team. I was leading their finance group, actually. We had about a $300 million P&L. It was really great. I was learning a lot, but I wanted to do something a little different. And so I asked to get involved commercially and sort of start to understand our customers a little bit. So we had some really big customers. And my boss was very nice, and he said, okay, and brought me in to meet customers and sort of start to have conversations with them and understand the business. So again, I thought I was going to be on this finance ladder. And then our head of sales at the time at Haemonetics for plasma left the company. And I took a risk. Now I look back on it, I can't believe I was this bold, but I did it. I walked into my boss's office. He's the president of plasma, and I volunteered to take the role. I've never done sales before. I volunteered to take the role. And he somehow saw something in me and knew that he could help me, he could mentor me, and said yes. And so I became the head of sales for plasma, negotiated big deals, big contracts with our customers, did a lot of customer support and business development. So that was, again, another kind of turn off the ladder that I thought that I was on. The last big jump was to Grifols. And Grifols was one of our customers for Haemonetics, and plasma collection. You guys are in healthcare, so you may know this already, but in case you don't, basically we collect blood plasma from donors. And then your plasma has a lot of really powerful proteins in it. And so the company would basically pull out those proteins, purify them, and then infuse them into patients and treat immune deficiencies, blood disorders, some other diseases as well. So that was Grifols, and they're sort of end-to-end, vertically integrated, from plasma collection all the way to selling the medicines. So they were my customer, and they kind of stole me away. And again, no surprise to anybody, there was a bit of a twist and a turn at Grifols. So I somehow talked my way into being their marketing director. I had not done marketing before, although I had seen it, obviously, and J&J had been somewhat involved. But I saw that at Grifols, they had some really strong marketing people. They just weren't a team yet. And so what I did is come in to lead the team and really build up people who had a lot of marketing prowess, but they just weren't working together closely. And so I sort of built up that team, we together really built up marketing within Grifols, and it became a strategic advantage. That went well. The last step within Grifols was moving into a business unit. And so Grifols had bought a bunch of plasma collection companies. The president of one of those companies retired, and they asked me to step into her shoes, which was an incredible honor and very, very big shoes to fill. So I was running a business. I had about 1,600 people reporting up through me. It was full financial statement responsibility, led operations and quality and marketing and finance and HR, all at once. And I did that with that first business unit, and then they asked me to actually sort of mirror that or create a new business unit that looked just like that one in a different part of the country, which I was able to do. It was really fun. It was really hard leading a team like that during COVID. We were essential infrastructure, and so we were not allowed to close our plasma centers. We had to keep them open. That was really challenging. Then there was a lot with the labor market that happened. Inflation impacted us. So it was a really challenging time to lead, but it was actually the best time to lead because we had a lot of headwinds coming at us, and the team just, took them on, and we had a vision and we were able to deliver despite our headwinds. And that was just really wonderful to see. I'm very proud of that. But really the point of this sort of after Carolina, as well as before Carolina, if you think about this, it is not plannable, but every step is valuable. This isn't that stairway that I thought a career would be. It is a twisty, turny road. And it's been wonderful and scary and sometimes horrifying, but mostly wonderful. And, what I learned in all of this is just not to be afraid of opportunity and find opportunity, find what you're interested in, if it's biology, if it's business, if it's finance, and find a way to do it. And that was very satisfying for me. So the last thing I'll say is to kind of bring this all back to the beginning of the presentation. I was talking about when I sat in your chair, sort of who I was back then and what I was thinking. And if only I had known. And hopefully this is helpful for you in some way. Biology, I thought I didn't have a fit in healthcare without being on the science side or on the patient care side. I was wrong. Healthcare needs business minds. It needs leaders everywhere. It needs more nurses. It needs more doctors. It needs more minds in public health to bring ideas and technologies to patients. And that is so important, more than ever, in our society today. I thought I had to have it all figured out. And you know what? The future is unpredictable. You just have to learn and take advantage of opportunities. They will come. Don't panic. I thought I had to have that perfect internship and that perfect job. You know what? Most career paths are diverse and winding. When I talk with my classmates now, I'd say the vast majority of us are in different fields than when we left MBA. A lot of us went into banking, and some are still in banking, but most are doing sort of different things in banking. Some were in banking and now they're in industry. One is writing a book. We ended up doing a lot of different things and learning along the way. And I also realized that none of us had it figured out, even though I thought everybody else except for me did. And then lastly, I'm a little embarrassed to say it took me a while to figure this one out. It's not about me. And particularly as a leader, it's not about you. It's about your team and it's about others, and helping others, focusing on others is so fulfilling. Building people up so that they deliver and love doing it is just an incredible feeling. And it is so much more fun. So for you, I wanted to close by saying, you've got this. Think about your foundation as strong. Your foundation is so strong. You are Tar Heels. You are in Carolina. That means that you are smart. You've got a great foundation. You have so much at Carolina to help you. You have CBOH. You have amazing professors. You have each other to learn from. You have a wonderful experience and campus, and you have Chapel Hill to learn from as well. So your foundation at Carolina is really strong. Healthcare is vital, and it continues to be even more vital. Industries come and go. Companies come and go. Healthcare is not going to go. It is so important. And it's so amazing when you think about some of the technologies that are coming out, some of how we're able to treat patients now that 5 years ago didn't exist. That's going to keep happening. Technology is going to keep coming, and we need people to continue healthcare, move it forward because it is so vital. You are in an amazing space. And then your Carolina family. And it's really special. And I think sometimes you realize that the most once you've left Carolina. I'm jealous of all of you who are still there. I wish I was there. There are, I think it's 360,000 Carolina alumni around the world right at this moment. And we're all Tar Heels, and we love helping Tar Heels, and we're here to support you and to help you. And all you have to do is ask. So you've got this. And thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Katherine. First of all, amazing story of your path. And although I'm sure from the beginning it looked frightening and you were unsure, from the back end, now that you can look, just showing some of the pictures, showing the risks that you took, it does look fun. It looks exciting. And that's why I'd like to ask you a follow-up question about how do you feel that having a more diverse pathway enriches one's career, and also just kind of you personally, because you really took some twist. I mean, like really like right-hand turns. Maybe even
I'm left-handed, so left-hand turns, but yeah.
So let me just let us know a little bit more about how do you feel that enriched, again, not only your career, but you personally?
It took me a while to really recognize this, but business in particular and healthcare, obviously, I mean, is all about people, and everybody is different, and it's all about people all around the US and all around the world. And I think it's about being relatable to people and really understanding that there are a lot of different perspectives, and that you're not always right. I'm not always right in my perspective. And being able to just connect and understand people's experiences, even if they're very different from your own. And a lot of what I was able to do in my career, both the different kinds of work that I did and the different functions I was in, but especially living abroad, and trying out a lot of different things, being at Carolina. I think it really broadened my mind and helped me understand how to work with people better and to support people better and be a better leader for them. So career-wise, I think that's really what's was most important for me. I think personally, I've somehow, as this has all happened, become a calmer person, even though things have changed and shifted. And I think it's because, as experiences happen, as I failed at some things and was rejected by some things, something came along, or I found something after all. And so I don't panic anymore when something changes. And, I think having that calm has really helped me be a better human.
Thank you. And again, too, I do feel that like you said, like you're expecting things to change, and that's wonderful. Now I do want to open the floor just real quickly for any questions at this point, because again, too, please dig in here, guys, and ask some questions now that you've heard Katherine's story. Again, you can raise your digital hand. You can just unmute if you would like. And we'll get that first question out there, and then I'm sure everybody will be like, yeah, okay, I can ask some questions.
Can I ask a
Tian?
question of all of you? Is it possible maybe in a chat or something? And William, I see you may have a question. Just to let me know where you are at Carolina, if you're in business school, if you're in public health, if you're in nursing, medical school. It's just interesting for me. So if you don't mind putting that in the chat. And then I think we do have a question.
Yep. So I've got William and Tian both unmuted. So somebody go ahead, ask your question.
I guess I was just wondering, I know you got a master's, but did you ever think about a PhD? And if you did, like, was there like not a reason to pursue it? Or I was just kind of wondering what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, back in the Irish literature, you mean?
Oh, did you get, yeah, like way back when?
Yeah, so I guess there were 2 points when I was thinking of going further with my degree. One was after business school, after college, when I graduated with my degree in biology, there was a path to get a master's in bio and then potentially a PhD. I decided not to do that. I had worked in a bunch of labs with some of my professors, bio labs with some of my professors. And the work there for me was hard for me. I realized at the time that I was more of a sort of a people person, and I wasn't as good with all the details. And so I equated that experience with getting a PhD. That was probably wrong, but at the time I did. And I wasn't interested enough, I think, to spend that amount of time. So that was the biology one, which has to do with healthcare, of course. The Irish literature, that was something I just did for a couple of years because I was really interested in it, but I knew it wasn't a career for me. I knew it wasn't getting a PhD in literature, Irish or otherwise. That wasn't really what I was interested in. So I sort of knew that going in that it would just be those 2 years. That was a great question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Tian, do you have a question?
I think Tian's mic is broken.
Oh, okay.
So
All
yeah.
right. Thanks, William. Terrific. And I think I'm going to put the next question out to Katherine, but also to the group, because what I heard a lot of was risk taking in your story, Katherine, even when you didn't think you were taking risks. Like, so say when you said you applied the first time for an internship with J&J, and then you did not get that first internship. Again, too, that might be a small risk, but again, you took some really big risks. As you said, I've never done, marketing before or sales before. And I just went in like, hey, I'd love to volunteer. I love that. I'd love to volunteer for this position. So I'd like to ask you and the group about what you feel that calculated risks are for you and how they've helped you or how you might be nervous about taking them. And so I'll start with Katherine to talk just a little bit about calculated risks, but I would like the rest of the group to just start thinking about that from your perspective.
Sure. It's a funny thing looking back at a career, which is not over, by the way. There's still more to come, but looking back at my career thus far and recognizing the risk that I took, because Suzanne, to your point, I'm not sure, especially early on, that I really recognized that I was taking these risks. When you're young, many of you are young. You may be undergrads or just out of undergrad. At least for me, I was more of a risk taker in that I really didn't understand the repercussions of things. And so, I was more comfortable just saying, hey, I'll go to London and, I'll figure it out when I get there. I'm not sure that I would do that now. But, I think some of it is having confidence in yourself and, sort of building that I think I built that as I went along when I did take risks, and either they worked out or they didn't. And then if they didn't, I sort of figured out what to do next. And that made me a little less scared of of failing, because I certainly have failed many times through my career. And, it's not the end of the world. And it may knock you off a step on your path, but then there's another step or another path to take. So I think that helped a lot. But also in these risks, I think the way I tell it, especially the volunteering to do the commercial role, it's not like I just stood up from my desk one day and decided to volunteer. I mean, I really thought about it. And, I thought about what I knew about the business, and I thought about the customers I would be working with. And I thought particularly about my boss, and knowing that he's somebody who wants to mentor people and really help grow leaders. So I sort of had all of that as context and thought it was worth taking a chance. So it wasn't sort of a speculative, one day I had the idea and I just jumped in, but it was a little more calculated, I think.
That's fantastic. So group, have you taken a calculated risk lately, or are you kind of contemplating one right now that you might want to put out to the group, and Katherine and some other folks that are here to just kind of discuss, like, how do you take next steps to decide if that's kind of like the risk you want to take? It's a great time to get some feedback.
It's so interesting thinking about risk. And for those of you, I see a bunch of you are in nursing school. You're phenomenal. We owe so much to you. We have at Grifols has a lot of nurses who work in our plasma centers. My cousin, who I'm very close with, is a nurse up in Burlington, Vermont. And the work that you are going to do is really incredible. And I know you learn your craft, but to me, so maybe showing up as a nurse every day, there's some risk in that. Because I think you don't really know what your day is going to be like. So for those of you in nursing school, I see that there's pharmacy school as well, which is great, public health. I think those are wonderful places to be able to take some risks that Suzanne's talking about.
Definitely. And we do have a question from the chat. If you could do anything different, what will it be?
That's a great question. I think it was. It's a hard question. I think looking back, I'm not sure there are any major decisions that I made that I would want to do differently, because then I wouldn't have ended up where I ended up, which, I like where I am now. However, I think if I had made a different decision in the past, the other things would have happened, which would have been interesting. And I don't really focus on regret a lot, I would say. But looking back, I do see a pattern in that sometimes I'm not sure that I gave myself enough time in each opportunity, if that makes sense. So I think, some of me, when I talk to my friends who are still at J&J, and, I still love the company. Sometimes I wonder, it's not exactly wishing that I would do it differently, but sometimes I wonder if I had stayed there. And, now that work is virtual, it doesn't matter that I'm in Boston. So, part of me thinks maybe I should have stuck that out because I really believe in that company. So that could have been something that I would have done a little bit differently. I think I would have asked more questions, and I think I would have, at Carolina, asked more questions of my classmates and realized that also they didn't know what they were doing. So, I really felt like everybody else had their path and that I was the only one who was uncertain. And I'm very wrong about that. But I wish I had the confidence to talk with them more about that. It's a great question.
And that's fantastic advice because, again, too, just as someone who speaks to many people, I speak to the inside person, and I can tell you 80% of students, no matter what level, undergrad, grad, MBA, they don't have a plan either. They're doing the best way. We call it kind of wayfinding. You kind of have a direction that looks good, and you do everything that you can to get there, although you might take a few different turns. But that's, again, too, where zooming out and not looking at it like, what can I get? But again, what can I give, or how can, and I start to make impact on every level as I move through. So again, great advice. Now, I know you talked a little bit about failures, and although now you say it kind of with a smile on your face, like, I was devastated. How can you give some advice to the students about how they can really take those failures or steps that didn't work that first time and use that kind of to get to their next step, or to keep trying, or find a different route?
It's a great question. And I know, you know, as you go through business or nursing or public health or any path, you learn a lot about yourself. And I do kind of smile when I talk about the failures. And I've learned about myself that I get over things really fast. And I don't know why. It just is my personality, and I'm a hopeless optimist. And so, you know, I believe things are going to get better, and, you know, usually they do. So what I've actually learned is that is not most people's experience. And having, you know, led a lot of teams and, you know, really helped develop a lot of my team members, I've learned that failure to them, or, you know, real challenges to them, really makes an impact and can stay with a person for a long time. And so I've had to sort of learn what that experience is for others. And, you know, for them, you know, usually what I talk about is, you know, the first thing is, you know, be in your failure for a little while. It's okay to mourn or to be really sad or devastated about whatever it is that just happened to you. If it's a career failure or something else, a life failure, it's okay to be upset about it and to really think about it for a while. And then there's a time to sort of switch your brain a little bit to, okay, what have I learned from this failure? And, you know, let's unpack it a little bit. And, you know, what might I have done different, you know, leading up to it, if there was anything to do different? Or, you know, in a situation like this, if it comes up again, what would I do? And, you know, and what have I learned? And typically, I think that really helps. First of all, it's a good exercise. We should all do it. You know, I certainly do it. You really, there's so much more to learn, I think, from failure than from success. But that's really been something that I think has been helpful, you know, after you get through that kind of point. And then, you know, I'm a big believer in sort of having a vision for the future, even if you don't know quite what that future is going to be, but sort of having a vision, like you talked about, Suzanne, in terms of that wayfinding. You know, you sort of have an idea of what that future is, and, you know, kind of keep your eye on that as you're thinking about this immediate failure or challenge that you have, and, you know, sort of try to find your way around it to a different experience or opportunity that will help you continue to get there. But, you know, I think overall failure, I know people say it and it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Failure is really good. And if you don't fail, it will be hard for you to have a strong career, because you have to have that experience and you have to learn from it.
Again, sage advice there, which leads us into a really interesting question that Jaden has put in the chat. How did you know the decisions you made were the, and I'm doing this, right ones? Examples, moving to England, moving to Ireland. So I'm going to throw it out to you, Katherine.
That's a great question. And you know, Jaden, I think I learned that there isn't a right decision. And that, you know, I had these different experiences and they became, you know, part of who I am, and they brought me to my next experience. And so, you know, I've learned, and I really thought that things were very black and white, and it was like you had to make that right decision. And coming out of college, like that first thing you did was really important. And I'm not saying it's not important, but it's not do or die to get that exactly right. And just life kind of takes a path from whatever decision you make. And, you know, I think as long as you're kind of open to that and open to different opportunities, I don't know that any decision was right or wrong. I will say that I always, now I didn't realize this at the time, but looking back, there was always something I was really interested in, or just had that, you know, when you get that feeling inside that just you're excited about something, and or something, it's like your heart beats a little faster. Like that's what happens to me when I think about biology. I know that's weird, but it does. You know, and my heart beats a little faster. Leaving college, that happened when I thought about London. I studied abroad in London, so I had experience there. I don't know, I just had that heartbeat, and that made me think I should follow it. You know, same with moving to Ireland. It just felt like maybe it was right. But again, I know that this is not, it's a hard, I don't think, if I was talking to my 22-year-old self, I'm not sure that I would believe me. But there really, to me, is not a right decision. It's just a decision, and then you make the best of what comes.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And again, too, we get this question often for panels, et cetera. Again, I think that this is a cultural norm of this right and wrong. And again, too, it's kind of like, even if you take a wrong turn for a street, you can take another turn and get back to where you want to go. So again, if that's a simplistic analogy, that maybe kind of pulling away and not saying I'm making right or wrong, but I'm making a decision that's best for me right now. And you might like it, you might not, but there's always a way to get back on that highway toward kind of that North Star that you're driving toward. So again, Katherine, I think that was a great, again, great advice for something of that sort, because again, there were probably, like you said, there were some things that didn't work out, like when your visa, you know, wasn't being renewed. But again, those were things you couldn't anticipate, and that's kind of career life, I believe. So I know. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just one quick thing I would add to that. I was actually thinking a little bit more about your question, Jaden, and some advice I would have is, one thing that's helped me along the way as I've done these different things and kind of found different opportunities is that I really built networks everywhere I was. So at Carolina, there are so many incredible, you guys are incredible students, and you have so many incredible classmates and professors and others that you can network with and just create relationships with, so that, you know, if you make a turn and then you realize that maybe that's not the turn you wanted to make, and you want to, you know, you made a right turn and now you want to make a left turn, you've got people to talk with and people who will help you. And that's been a huge help for me in all my twists and turns.
Definitely. And I told some students the other night, I was like, your students right now, people love to talk to you and give you advice. That's, you know, so make those networks now so that you could have some of that trusted advice for yourselves. All right. So again, further questions, I know we've had some active chats here in the chat box. But again, I'd like to put it out to the crowd. If you're kind of having anything mulling in your head about making some decisions as you move to the next step in your education or in your career. I know it's a late Tuesday night, so again, feel free to pop something in the chat, but I do want to ask a last question that I think is fairly important. And Katherine, what does making impact in the business of healthcare mean to you?
I'm preaching to the choir here with everybody here in healthcare. I can't imagine being in any other industry. You know, I could be in a company that makes this water bottle or the pen that I was just writing with, and that's awesome. And we need pens and water bottles. But there's something about helping patients lead better lives, healthier lives, live, that is just incredible, that I feel incredibly honored that I'm able to help in any way in that. And you know, I think in all the roles that I've had and in every role that I've seen, everybody makes an impact, from the person doing the cost accounting, doing full absorption accounting and operations, you know, within that was within a diagnostics company, to, you know, people in a Benetton, well, Benetton isn't healthcare, but people, you know, in the hospital, at the concession stand, say everybody is making an impact in their own way. And I can't imagine a better way to make an impact, and to really be excited getting out of bed to know that we can help.
Terrific, thank you. And again, we're at 6:59. This is probably a great place to wrap up, but I want to thank Katherine so much for, you know, really kind of bearing your winding road to the group and providing such helpful advice and just something tangible that folks can really kind of dive into and maybe kind of, you know, talk to themselves a little bit, reflect a little bit as they're going through maybe some of the earlier steps moving toward their careers. And I want to thank everybody who attended tonight. Again, if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can take a look. Katherine is on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to connect with folks. And again, I put the Career Networks link in the chat, so pull that up and please join us for some of the events in the future. But again, Katherine, thank you for taking your time. We hope to see you soon, and everybody have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks.